Hey everybody, what's happening? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com, and we are live once again here talking some Syracuse basketball with you following a pretty brutal loss for the Orange. Second straight game you would put in the brutal category for Syracuse. This time a 59-44 loss to Virginia at the Carrier Dome. So we are here live on the syracuse.com Syracuse basketball Facebook page. Do me a solid, hit the like, hit the share, let people know that we're here and talking about this game here with you on Facebook Live. If you are watching later on our YouTube replay or a replay of some sort, if you could share this on social media, would appreciate that as always. Well, let's start right here, and this pretty much tells the tale of this game. 44 points. And think of that number and what it means for Syracuse University athletics. 44 points today against Virginia is the lowest amount a Syracuse basketball team has scored in the history of the Carrier Dome. That breaks a mark set a few years ago when Syracuse only scored 46 against Georgetown. Now, today, it happened against the best defensive team in college basketball. When they only scored 46 against Georgetown, that was far from the case. That was just one of the most, self-inflicted wounds, if you will, type of offensive performance that Syracuse has had. So at least you could say that it happened today against one of the best defensive teams in the country, but still, pretty poor showing on the offensive end for Syracuse. You don't really have to look at the numbers to know how bad it was, but let's look at some numbers just for context, shall we? So Tyus Battle and Frank Howard, in the last game against Georgia Tech, combined to shoot 8 of 34. They actually improved in this game, but it was 10 of 34 combined for Tyus Battle and Frank Howard. Tyus did lead Syracuse with 15 points, was 2 of 8 from three-point range, but had to shoot 6 of 17 to get there. Frank Howard had 11 points today. He was 4 of 17 overall. He was 1 of 9 from three-point range. O'Shea Brissett, who was actually looking good early in the first half, had some great drives, had a great kind of glide right through the Virginia defense for a dunk, was looking like he was going to, be a difference maker today on the offensive end. Pardon me. He was 3 of 11 shooting the ball today. Matthew Moyer and Pascal Chukwu. Now remember, when Syracuse went to Virginia a couple weeks ago, Pascal Chukwu had 15 points and 11 rebounds in that game. Syracuse lost that game, but they were in that right until about 6 or 7 minutes left in the second half before Virginia pulled away, as Virginia always does, right? And Syracuse has gotten to them a couple times in recent years with the press. The press wasn't working today. Pascal Chukwu did not attempt a shot today. Matthew Moyer did not attempt a shot today. The real one positive thing, and as it stands right now, this could change if I look at the box score and see something else. The one thing that will go in my sunny side in the syracuse.com recap that I write, so check that out tomorrow morning. Always there the morning after a Syracuse basketball game. The one thing, maybe two, because they had less than 10 turnovers in this game against the best defensive team in the country, was Marek Dolezaj. Marek Dolezaj was asserting himself on the offensive end. He's taking shots, 9 points, 7 rebounds. He's struggling on the defensive end in some ways, but listen, he's starting to get a little confidence on the offensive end, and Syracuse needs something. They need anything on the offensive end, because this has got to be one of the most inept offensive teams I've seen Syracuse ever have. It's incredible to see how they just cannot shoot the ball, and desperate times call for desperate measures in a way. And, chat along here live on syracuse.com, and you're on social media. And, of course, I talked about it on the radio this week. And, I asked Jim Boeheim straight up on Thursday. I said, what do you do to, get the offense going a little bit here? And his answer then, and he said it at not this press conference that just happened, but on Wednesday after Georgia Tech, was, we can't hit shots, so I can't run a lot of plays for this team. And it's hard to argue with that. I mean, you got to try something. You got to try and spark the offense any way you can. And it's not like, could they do more? The amateur coaches on social media and in the message boards and everything will just, it just reminds me of, you ever see that movie Spaceballs, and everybody's panicking and they just start yelling, do something, right? That's what Syracuse fans are saying at this point. Just do something. But they can't hit shots. This team, it is the most basic fundamental thing in basketball. Put the ball in hoop. And they are really struggling to do it. They're a good rebounding team. They're a good defensive team, although Virginia did out-rebound this team today, 35-26. I say that, and Syracuse was not a good rebounding team today, but by and large, they've been good rebounding defensively. This is, you look at this 59-44 loss for Syracuse, it's one of the few losses they've had all year that you would put into not necessarily blowout category, but significant. Most of Syracuse's games are close, but they are so inept offensively that you've really got to wonder how this team can make a difference here in what is a month chock full of opportunities to shore up their NCAA tournament resume. Joe Lunardi, ESPN's native bracketologist, dropped Syracuse from his bracketology for Virginia Tech, which is kind of ironic considering Syracuse beat Virginia Tech, A, and B, Virginia Tech's always that team that when Seth Greenberg was coaching, they never made it, right? But that's where it stands right now. Syracuse is a quick turnaround. They've got to play Louisville on Monday. Louisville lost to Florida State today, 80-76. But, Louisville, it's a little different than what Rick Pitino was doing, but they still play a lot of pressure defense. They're still going to make it hard on a Syracuse team that just cannot, function on the offensive end. Virginia has the pack line defense, and they slow the game down, and they're so efficient, and they're so disciplined, and mistakes that you make are compounded. You make one mistake against Virginia, it may as well be two mistakes that you make against Virginia. So Louisville's going to put a lot of pressure on Syracuse. Maybe they'll have an opportunity to get out and transition more and make that more of a free-flowing game. But one thing that was notable about today as well, the offensive problems are what you always come back to with this Syracuse team. Let's go Yankees. Chris is already moving on to baseball season. Hey, Chris, let's go Red Sox, my friend. Although that Yankees team's pretty loaded. Wow. Stanton and the moves that they made, it's going to be really fun. The Yankees-Red Sox is back, baby, but we'll get to baseball when we get to baseball. And don't forget lacrosse, by the way. All those people making the jokes, can't wait for football season. Don't forget about lacrosse now, okay? Don't forget about that. But we were talking about Louisville and what Syracuse is going to be up against in that game. So you have Louisville, and in no particular order after that game, you have Duke, and you have North Carolina, and you have Miami and Florida State, who beat Louisville today. There's so many opportunities for Syracuse to shore up their NCAA tournament resume. But, Jim Boeheim even said it. Let me pull up the quote here so we get it right here. Jim said it at his press conference, and I'm paraphrasing, a report that I saw out of the presser. I don't have the exact quote, but it was basically this, quote, "We have 15 wins. There's 8 games left, and we have to find a way to win a few of those. But the way things are right now, it will be difficult." So, Jim Boeheim with a pretty honest assessment of where his team's at. Nobody's given up yet. They're going to play these games out. But the bottom line is you need signature wins, and Syracuse doesn't have one. Their best win, RPI-wise, and RPI is not everything these days. They use other measurements. They use, Ken Palm ratings and all kinds of analytics. But you need good wins. And Syracuse's best win, if you go by RPI right now, guys, is Buffalo, who's 32. Buffalo. That's your best win. So there's opportunities there to get signature wins, but you got to score. And this team, it's amazing how they just cannot shoot the ball. It's not like they aren't getting open shots. They had some open shots in this game, even against one of the better teams in the country, in Virginia. There was a stretch in this game where, let me pull it up here, Syracuse in the first half was pretty close. Okay, here it is right here. Syracuse trailed 20-18 with just under 7 minutes to go in the first half. For a good part of the first half, Syracuse was keeping pace, 27,000 strong, the largest on-campus crowd in college basketball this year, was kind of rooting this team on. But then Virginia, as they're apt to do, because they just compound any mistakes that you make, goes on a 11-0 run. They take a 31-18 lead. Syracuse went 6 minutes before they scored again. Tyus Battle ended that drought with a three-pointer with about 54 seconds to go in the half. But against Virginia, who's such an efficient team and compounds mistakes, as we said, doesn't turn the ball over themselves. They actually turned the ball over more in this game than Syracuse did, believe it or not. The one stat I'll look at here that amazes me, considering how good Virginia is on the defensive end, Syracuse only had 7 turnovers in this game. Virginia had 11 turnovers. Syracuse got 14 points off those turnovers. That's amazing considering Virginia has one of the best assist to turnover ratios in not only the ACC, but college basketball. If you had told me that stat blind without knowing what the final score was, I would have told you, hey, wait a minute, what did Syracuse do in this game? But when you can't shoot, when you can't score, when your offense is in that stuck in the mud category, and Syracuse matched Virginia in the paint 22-22, there's a couple of things there that you say, wow, maybe Syracuse hung in this game. But then, Virginia shot 48% overall, 7 of 23 from three-point range. Kyle Guy was killing Syracuse from the outside. He needs to bring that man bun back, by the way, don't you guys think? And that's all Virginia has to do. Virginia, and by the way, listen, I love what Tony Bennett's doing with this program. They're not a fun team to watch. I caught myself there. They're not a fun team to watch, but you got to admire what they're doing. Because if you're Tony Bennett, you're not running the most sexy offense in college basketball. It's about grinding, patience on offense. It almost reminds me of Hoosiers, 4 passes before you shoot, and they're patient. And you're going to come here and you're going to grind on defense and you're going to play games in the 50s and 60s. It's like I could just see the recruiting pitch, right? How do you get kids to buy into that? But he's done that. Jamie Dixon did the same thing at Pittsburgh before that kind of slipped off and he went to TCU, and he's built that program back up. That's a real credit to what Tony Bennett has done. He's one of the best coaches in the country. And look, I know Virginia is number 2. They should be number 1. They're the best team in the country, and I wonder when the polls come out Monday if that'll be the case. That's the best team in college basketball right now. They've won 14 straight games. Not that Villanova's bad. Don't get me wrong. They're in that conversation too, but I think all told, Virginia is the best team in the country. Now, I saw a comment from Paul about next year. Next year, their center needs to be more aggressive. And, Chris, I'm going to answer your question about Tyus Battle as well, but while we're on the thought of next year, here's what's happening at this point. Syracuse is slowly but surely kind of slipping into that NIT abyss, right? I think, let's be honest here. We mentioned the signature wins they've got to pick up. There's 8 games left, and they're running out of time to pick up some big wins. But next year, you have a team that's going to have, and if I forget a name or two, make sure you remind me in the comments, guys. So Jalen Carey comes in. Darius Basley comes in. Syracuse has one of the top recruiting classes in the ACC next year, top 20 overall, okay? You bring in Buddy Boeheim, who can shoot the lights out. Let's not forget Elijah Hughes comes off the bench. He can't play this year because he's a transfer, but I've been hearing great things about him at practice. He's a good player, good scorer, and Syracuse really needs him right now, but obviously he can't play. Everybody you bring back on this team, which leads to, Chris, what you brought up. I think Tyus Battle's back on this team next year. I wrote about this on syracuse.com this week. You can check it out at syracuse.com/axeman. I'll try and remember to slip in the link when we're done with the chat here. But I spoke with an NBA scout this week, and he said that Tyus Battle at this point is a borderline second-round pick. He's a borderline pick at all. Tyus Battle, he's slipping in the eyes of NBA scouts in terms of coming out this year. He's still an NBA talent, but it's becoming more and more clear he's going to need another year. If he comes out after this year, he's really taking a chance. I would encourage him, as any player in his position should do, to test the waters. You've got that option. Go out there, go to the workouts, hear what NBA people are telling you, and then back out if you're not going to be in a draft position you want to be in. Well, as it stands right now, the NBA scout I talked to said that Tyus is limited in terms of he can't go left. He is somebody who has the ball taken away from him way too much in the paint. He does not have a good offensive shot. He said there's a hitch in his swing, like a golf swing, right? There's a hitch in his delivery, in his follow-through. And look, in having these conversations with NBA scouts the past few years, because what Syracuse has going for them, they have 6 straight years of first-round draft picks. That's second only to Kentucky, who has 8, and Duke, who has 7. So NBA scouts are familiar with Syracuse, but you need something that stands out about you. What's something that makes you stand out in your peer group? There's a lot of 6'6" shooting guards in college basketball, and Tyus Battle's doing nothing right now to stand out. If anything, what's standing out is that his NBA skill set is not developing at the rate it should. So I think he's back next year, and everybody that's on this team now comes back next year a year older, a year wiser, and better players. But what's happening here is, slowly but surely, is there's a lot of pressure on this team next year to kind of right the ship, if you will. Now, Syracuse went to the Final Four 2 years ago, but let's go through the last few years. 2015, they were 18-13. They did not make the tournament because of a self-imposed ban, but that was an 18-13 team. They would have been on the bubble. 2016, Final Four year, went 19-13, beat this Virginia team in that famous Elite Eight game, and, what a run. Last year, 18-14, they go to the NIT. This year, as it stands right now, they're 15-8. They're 4-6 in league play, and this is one of the worst offensive teams I have ever seen. So how this team is going to beat some of the heavyweights left on their schedule, their neck's going to get sore looking up in the ACC standings, playing the teams coming up here. So it's not over. It's February 3rd. We just passed Groundhog Day, but Groundhog Day in this sense could be Syracuse missing the tournament again. Somebody cue up I Got You, Babe, right? So next year's class is looking good. They just offered a player. I'm going to pull up the story here. If you guys did not see this on the recruiting front this week, particularly those of you in New York State, you certainly know this name. And a lot of you have been asking me about this while we're on the recruiting front here, if Syracuse was going to offer this kid. So Joseph Girard III is New York's all-time leading scorer. He's from Glens Falls. And people up in that range, he's not quite Jimmer Fredette. Remember Jimmer Fredette and the amazing run that he had coming out of Glens Falls? He's not quite Jimmer Fredette 2.0, but here's the thing. The kid can flat out shoot the ball. He is one of the best scorers, one of the best shooters we've seen in New York State high school basketball. He got an offer from Syracuse this week. And from everything that I hear, he wants to go to Syracuse. So that could be good news for 2019. So it's kind of a balancing act right now, because you're frustrated about this year, right? And people are questioning, well, why isn't Jim Boeheim running more plays? Or why isn't Jim Boeheim doing this or doing that to fix this offense? And in the short term, that's a valid criticism. But they can't hit shots. If you can't make shots, you can have the greatest playbook in history. You need players to make shots. Phil Jackson can run all the plays in the world, but if he doesn't have Michael Jordan there to do it, it doesn't matter, right? So I think the criticism would be more valid about the state of the program and where Syracuse at if you weren't recruiting well. And Syracuse is recruiting well. So that's the balance there. But here's the thing, and I brought it up a moment ago, it puts a lot of pressure on next year's team to balance things out and score and, be a team that gets this back on track. And one thing I haven't brought up yet that we should certainly mention, Barama Sidibe did not play tonight. And Barama did not play because his knee tendonitis flared up. Jim Boeheim mentioned in his press conference that Barama said he didn't feel he could go today. Now, I didn't notice this myself, but I checked on it a little bit and was reminded by a colleague of mine that Barama kind of banged his knee a little bit at the end of the Georgia Tech game. So maybe that flared up his knee tendonitis. You know how these things go with injuries. They only tell you basically what they have to. But Barama didn't even play. So when you're in a situation where Pascal Chukwu and Matthew Moyer don't even attempt a shot, and you have no paint presence. And again, Syracuse tied Virginia at points in the paint, but that was from O'Shea, and that was from the guard play. Merrick Dolzai was a big part of that. When you're big guys, and Matthew Moyer's coming back from an ankle injury, so we'll cut him a little slack there. But boy, Pascal Chukwu has just fallen off the map. Now, the trade-off there was, of course, that you had Barama to come in, and Barama looked great at 18 and 16 against Boston College and was looking like somebody that could at least give Syracuse some quality minutes. Couldn't even get out there. So that's on top of Howard Washington's out for the year. Torian Thompson left this team, and boy, do they need him. I know it's February and you can't dwell on the past, but what are we talking about here? This team has no scoring in the paint. Torian Thompson was the best offensive player this team had, and he left the team. They really could use him at this point. Geno Thorpe, as we know, left the team. So combination of injuries and departures. And remember, Barama was an 11th hour decision in terms of whether he would medically redshirt or not, and he didn't. But it's touch and go with him. We saw it today. He didn't play. He couldn't play. And, I give him credit for being honest about that, in that he said it couldn't go. If you can't give a team quality minutes, you can't hurt your team by being out there. So that's touch and go. And we'll see what the situation is for Monday. At this point, you're at Braden Bayer. Braden Bayer, and who didn't play today, but I would imagine we'll see him on Monday. John says here that we're talking about Gerard, the kid from Glens Falls. He's not coming here to compete against Boeheim's kid. I mean, we'll see. I mean, this team needs shooters, man. Buddy Boeheim can shoot the ball. Buddy Boeheim might redshirt next year. So, yes, they would be competing because the kid we mentioned from Glens Falls, he's a 2019 commit. We're still, a year off on that anyway. But it's a good comment from John. Josh says, let's see. Oh, let's go through the comments here. John says they might not win another game this year. I think they'll win a couple more games for sure. They got Boston College again. They can certainly beat that team. They've got a couple teams down the road they could beat. But, what do you need to get to the tournament? You need quality wins. You need, in the ACC, bare minimum 9 league wins. Syracuse is at 4 right now. So who are those 5 wins? Let me pull it up while we're yakking about it here, okay? That's a good point that you brought up there, John. So I'm going to pull up Syracuse's schedule while we're talking about it here. We'll just go through it, okay? Let's try and find 5 wins here for this team that can't score. Just give me a moment here, guys, while I'm pulling up the schedule. Okay, let's go through it. Louisville on Monday. At Louisville, that's going to be tough with that pressure defense, and they can score. Wake Forest, you can beat that team. There's a win. I know Syracuse did not. Let's go back to that last Wake Forest game. They lost 73-67 at Wake to start the year, but they can beat Wake. I'll put that in the winnable category. NC State at the Carrier Dome, that's winnable. I wouldn't mark it in pen that they can beat NC State, who beat Duke, remember? But that's a winnable game at home. At Miami, that's going to be tough. North Carolina, I know North Carolina slipped as of late, but that team can flat out score. Duke, you're not beating Duke at Cameron Indoor Stadium if you can't score. I know St. John's beat Duke today. I know. But Duke cannot play defense. They're the opposite of Syracuse. They are such a talented offensive team. They got 5 NBA players in that rotation, and they can't play defense. And St. John's had won 10 games all year and beat that team today. But anybody want to chalk that up as a win? You get BC again and Clemson. That's the rest of your schedule. Find me 5 wins in there. That's going to be tough for an offensive team for Syracuse, short of some sort of, what I meant to say, some sort of offensive revival for the Orange. So I think we'll end on that note. That's something to think about there. What and when do you say wait till next year if you're a Syracuse basketball fan? It's not over yet, but as the great Yogi Berra would say, it's getting late early for the Orange here. So we'll see if they can recover here. They're back at it Monday. We will be right back here on Facebook Live doing the thing after the game, so drop on by Monday night. In the meantime, thanks for hanging with us here today. Look for my recap on syracuse.com on Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, by the way. New England 28, Philadelphia 24. Gives me no pleasure to say that as a Bills fan because I'd like to see the Patriots go down, but that's what I think is going to happen. And the Eagles cover if you got it at 4.5 for entertainment purposes only. So enjoy Super Bowl Sunday. We'll see you back here on Monday after the Orange take on Louisville on the syracuse.com Orange basketball Facebook page.